Hello and welcome back to When Sunday Comes, a podcast that aims to get into the heart of women's football and hosted by myself, Graham Falk. Today's guest needs little introduction, however, she will get one. First and foremost, she is a serial title winner, a vastly experienced international with an unbelievable 103 caps, and perhaps most importantly, one of my favourite people and favourite footballers on the planet. Welcome to the show, Hayley Lauder. How was that for an introduction, mate? All right.
That's fine, I'm blushing.
That was the intention. I'm starting the podcast with the same question and the same question to start with and the same question to end with. So how's your morning been so far? It's 10 o'clock. Are you all right?
Yeah, it's fine. We were on a day off today, so I've been very lazy this morning, and I've had my coffee and I'm ready to rock. So
yeah, I think I would like to say I have mornings off. I don't know what they look like, but I've got a coffee, so I suppose right in some ways. But I think some people are going to be aware listening to this. Some people won't, but obviously they will. I know I work with Glasgow City, so it's not like the first time we've ever chatted. You can probably tell. But I'm going to try my best to cover your career as best as we can over the next 40 or so minutes, and hopefully we'll find out some things that I don't know about you. But we'll start with the present. Obviously, at the time of speaking, 100% league record for Glasgow City. Obviously, we've had the Champions League, bit of disappointment there, but you've got the armband. You've had it for a while now. You're almost in double figures for assists. How much you enjoyed the start of the season?
yeah, I've really enjoyed it. I think it's been a bit different because of like all the international dates, so it's been quite stop-start. But yeah, I think we've kept our side of the bargain. We're sitting joint top, and yeah, I think we're starting to play some really nice football as well. So it has been really enjoyable.
How big of a season does it feel for you in Glasgow City personally? Because I suppose last season in many ways was a bit of a transition. Obviously, Kreitz moved on to Motherwell. Joe got injured really early doors. Leroy obviously retired. So you had like this nucleus of really experienced players move on. And then all of a sudden, you're one of the most experienced. You've then got the armband, but you're like a year on from that now. So how big does that feel for you personally?
Yeah, I think like when you lose like Leanne Crichton and Leanne Ross, and then someone like Joe gets injured, I think you don't really like realise how big like characters, how much they took on for the team, especially, and for younger players. So yeah, it was last year was hard for us all because it was a transition year. Yeah, we didn't win anything, which at Glasgow City, that's not where we want to be. So yeah, and then getting the armband because of Joe's injury, I think, yeah, I've really enjoyed that side of things. I think last year kind of finding my feet with it, like how to bring my leadership across. But of course, like Joe's still about at training now. I've got Lee Alexander, like Jenna Clark as well. She's class, such a good young leader, and yeah, we've got a really good group. So they've actually made it really pretty easy for me, to be honest.
Made me laugh at first because I remember when you got the captaincy and I was like, oh, Hayley's like dead lovely, like almost like quiet and she's not like a screamer. And then I did some filming around the pitch and I was like, oh, all right, yeah, Hayley's not that quiet.
Yeah, like I'd say I'm quite different to how I am on the pitch. I'm really overly competitive and probably very annoying to a lot of people. But yeah, that's just who I am on the pitch, and I don't want to like do anything by halves. If I'm on, I'm there to win, and yeah, I'm sure like all my teammates know about that. But certainly off the pitch, I'm more relaxed, and yeah, I like a laugh and things like that. But yeah, the girls are great. To be fair, I think they understand who I am as a person and how I want to lead and win, and yeah, they've bought into that, and yeah, we've got so many good leaders in the team.
I think it's funny that if I was to describe your sort of personality on the pitch, especially obviously being able to watch you with film and close and stuff, and even off really, you are a winner and you're one of many that are within that squad that are winners because of your history. I think I call it like the Roy Keane mindset, where you almost become like frustrating when you don't win because you can just see it's hurting you. But for someone who's won so much, and let's be honest, you've won so much in the game. How do you keep that constant desire for more? Because it seems like there's no contentment with players like yourself.
No, there's definitely not. Like I hadn't won anything until I came to Glasgow City, so that was like quite a large bit in my career that I'd played, and I'd been in finals. I hadn't won. I'd been relegated in Sweden.
Hmm.
So to then come to Glasgow City, it was a big mindset shift for me because now, like, drawing a game wasn't good enough. Misplacing a pass really wasn't good enough. So, like, that's like me learning from players like Leanne Ross um, and the rest of the girls back then, like Suzanne Lappin. And that was a real shift for me. That took a while kind of to buy into that mindset. Not that I didn't buy into it, but like to switch that for me personally. And yeah, once you get a taste of winning things, I think, like, why would you not want to keep doing it? Why would you not want to? You put in so much work throughout the week, throughout the years. Like, why would you not want to try and be the best and go and win stuff? So yeah, and I've certainly had plenty of opportunities at Glasgow City to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously, me myself as a Glasgow City fan, I think people know that. I don't really want to touch on it, but I will. Obviously, last season, the first year in 18 years, we hadn't lifted anything. It included two really frustrating cup final defeats, and of course, we know what happened in the league. So, like I say, it feels like there's no contentment. You win so much, you win 14 titles in a row as a club, and you're used to winning trophies, then you don't. And then you've got a summer to kind of settle on it. How long does that sort of fester within you? Like, how long does it hurt?
Yeah, I can't lie. Like last year was tough. I certainly took plenty of time over the summer um, to sit and think and just digest really what happened. I'm not necessarily saying that we deserve to go and win this or we deserve to go and win that. I think it was a transitional year for us. It was a tough year, and yeah, it did take a bit of time. But I think that's when you probably take a step back from it's been relentless for years and years and years, but then you're able to take that step back and maybe learn a little bit about yourself and other people. And yeah, I think it, although I want to win everything that I do, like it probably was quite valuable as well, in terms of like the growth into this year, I think.
Because I think naturally there's probably always got to be a time. You always pray it doesn't come, but you're not going to win titles for 100 years on the bounce. It's just not going to happen. There's always going to be 1 year. And I suppose you probably almost, I wouldn't say need it, but I know what you mean in terms of like a learning phase that one time you don't have it, the one time you actually feel that hurt and you're not just the winner, probably teaches you more than sometimes just winning every single season, doesn't it, sometimes?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like I say, like if I could win everything for the next 100 years, then I would. But yeah, that's not realistic, and that's not going to happen. And like I said, like I think at the time it hurts. At the time, you probably can't understand why and how things have happened. But certainly, like looking back and reflecting, I think it was valuable. And yeah, I probably did learn quite a lot of things about myself and my character and how I wanted to like move on to this season. So
Yeah. And before I move on to your right the way back to your early beginnings, obviously you're 32, so you're far from retirement, but it's not going to miss on anyone that you've been doing really good stuff with BBC Alba Media at the Scotland games and stuff like that. How much have you enjoyed that side of the game, the media aspect of it?
yeah, I think I have really enjoyed it. It's not something that maybe comes natural to me. Um, so I think like the more I do it, the more I get into it. And but yeah, BBC Alba have been great. Inviting me along and just learning new skills and things like that as well, and like meeting new people. It's been really enjoyable, and obviously it's been great to follow the girls on the pitch as well.
Yeah, and it's obviously big moments as well when you look at the games you've covered. Like obviously the disappointment of the Island game, but 10,000 fans, and I think not to put down the game against Jamaica, but I think there was maybe a few more free tickets allegedly when at that point everyone's paying this time. People are coming and people are starting and people are getting angry. I like that. I like that people are getting angry. There's a lot of talk of the family friendly atmosphere. No, people were angry. Trust me. And I think that's a good thing. But we'll rewind back to maybe a time when, football, early 90s, it would have been when you were really young and you first started. Let's be pretty blunt, women's football was nowhere near as big or nowhere near where it was when you would have been young. So how did you begin?
Well, I just played with the boys in the street, really. And see, to be honest, I was always welcomed. Like, I know, like, for some people it was maybe unheard of that the girl, like a girl was playing and stuff, but I was invited along. Like, yeah, like so supportive. And then my primary school as well, which was quite probably uncommon then as well. I was able to play the boys team. Um, so I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of supportive people around me. And then, yeah, I actually joined a team quite late. So I was maybe 14 when I joined a girls team. So like now that's like really late because you can join a like under sixes or whatever. So I like a lot of it just stemmed from playing in the street though and just absolutely loving it.
It's funny, I interviewed Jill Scott and she's the same. She was like, no, like everyone in Forwell just used to kick the ball about the backyard, jump as for goalpost kind of thing. And I was just like, yeah. Suppose there is stories of that as well. I suppose the big difference, like you say, is probably the academy side of things. Now you can, I mean, you look at just Glasgow City, you go to Manchester City's academy, and there's kids coming through like pretty much from the womb, like straight onto a football pitch, and it's like that you probably wouldn't have seen. But moving on to you supporting and the clubs you support, obviously you're a Livy fan. I think people are probably aware of that. Were you someone who used to go to the games quite early? Is that a family connection, or was it just the nearest club to you? Or
Yeah, so we used to get free tickets through the school. So me and my dad would go, and that, yeah. And then just from that, like I've just kept going, season tickets. I mean, I maybe don't get to as many games as I would like to now. But yeah, that's just always been my team. So love it through the good and the bad.
would that have been your local team, Livy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. So obviously like it's quite Livingston's like as football club probably a bit unfortunate because you've got Hearts, Hibs, and then you've got Rangers, Celtic. But yeah, I love it.
My abide memory of Livingston is just the first interview that I ever did with you, and I got my words completely mixed up and started doing some sort of weird rap. I think it's probably my most it was horrendous. I'll try and dig the video out for people who are listening to this. I don't want to watch it. It's really bad. I basically say my sentence backwards because I was nervous, and then I just left it in. It was quite funny. How things have changed. You talked about obviously coming through at school. I think it was at Muirston Girls was the first team you were at. And please Wikipedia sorted me out there, thank God. Obviously, I think what most people know is your first club was Edinburgh Ladies, now known as Spartans. But I want to spin that past that a little because obviously I could be slightly wrong with the age here, but you were around 2021 when you moved to Cyprus with Apollon.
Yeah,
that's a big move. A, why did you make it? And B, how big of a learning curve was the move for you at that age?
Yeah, it wasn't like a long period of time. So I think like for it being my first sort of like 40 like out and like abroad and stuff, it was a good one because there was a cut-off point and things like that. But yeah, I went and played the Champions League and I went with Frankie Brown, who played for Scotland, and it was an eye opener if I'm being honest. Like Cyprus is not necessarily well known for women's football. They've got a couple good teams, but like the professionalism of it, the way they trained, the resources, the interest in it, yeah, like compared to like where we were at in Scotland at that point, it was a massive eye opener.
How did the Champions League aspect feel? Because I imagine, and again, it's absolutely no disrespect to Spartans or the Scottish League, but it was different, as you say. You know, it probably wasn't treating the same level of professionalism, and I'm sure we'll talk even more about that with your time in Scandinavia. But you're going from maybe much lesser crowds in Scotland, where you know there isn't a professional game at that point, and then you move to like Cyprus, where the professionalism is completely different, and you're in the Champions League, and you're still just 21. You're going from like West Lothian to Cyprus to 21. It's probably one of those things you don't realize how big of a move it is until you sit down on a podcast with me and talk about it in a way, isn't it?
Yeah, like, and I think that for any like young player that wants to play abroad, it is going to be hard. Like, I think there's so much noise from the outside saying, "Oh, you should move here, move there." Like, it's tough. It's quite isolating at times. Like, you have to go and meet new people, new team. Everything's new, and I think it's hard. But obviously, I had Frankie, so that was great. And And yeah, like to go and play from Spartans, which I love being at Spartans. They helped my development so much. But to just get a wee taste of like going out there and playing Champions League and things like that, I think that's at the point that I thought, right, this is something that I want to pursue.
Yeah, I suppose it adds that extra level of competitiveness at the age of 21. You're suddenly in the Champions League, and it's suddenly not just enjoying the football on a Sunday and
Yeah,
learning your trade. It's suddenly that competitive side, which I get that totally now. I think there's loads of players that I know, loads of players I've interviewed that have spent time in Scandinavia. You spent time with Aland Malbakkens. I'm not going to pronounce the team from Iceland. You probably do better than me, but you spent time in Scandinavia, and there was a few players who obviously done the same as well. I think obviously the names people would remember would be Emma Mitchell, obviously Emma McCandy now, Jane Ross. They were your teammates as well, for example. But there's tons of players that have done it. Kaylin, obviously, she spent time over in Iceland and Sweden as well. It felt like around that time, the Scandinavian countries were really pushing the women's game and treating it maybe as we should have been treating it a few years ago in maybe more like we are now. Obviously,
yeah,
3 different clubs there, in a couple of different countries. So I understand it's hard to kind of all encompass one, but how much of a difference was there in Scandinavia as opposed to back home at that time?
yeah. It was huge. I think, like even like culturally, like it was just so accepted that women were playing professional football. And that comes back to like the interest again, like the sponsorship at that time, the resources, like yeah, just like the crowds, everything was just a level up from where we were at that point. And I think Sweden, especially, is still a really strong league now. You can see how
Mm-hmm.
well their national team is doing. But yeah, it was an eye opener, and I loved it. Like I loved staying in Sweden. Like I just think they just kind of get life spot on. Like they're more about the quality, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was hard. Like the traveling was really hard. I was home quite a lot for internationals. Like I was sitting on a bus for 8 hours to then go play 90 minutes. Like I found it really tough in that sense. But yeah, as a place to live, I think yeah, it's one of my favourites.
I've been twice to Sweden. I've been to Gothenburg and Stockholm, and I loved it. Like every aspect of it. I didn't enjoy how much it cost for a pint, but that's by the by. Because that was expensive. My only thing about Sweden that I didn't really like is how much of a goblin I felt because everyone's absolutely beautiful. Um, and I literally felt like a goblin, and I was just like, I can't be having this. Like, so 4 days is about enough. um, I think the interesting thing about that time frame, and I imagine it might have played on your mind a little bit. Everyone's got international ambitions, which you've of course achieved. But when you move to a country where, especially when the games aren't freely ready to watch on TV, maybe as they are now, you would probably think it's just going to, affect my time in getting into Scotland. But you made your debut around that time when you're over abroad. How pleasing was that for you to be able to get noticed when you were playing abroad and playing and get picked for Scotland?
Yeah, I think I was going to a stronger league. I was going to better myself, really, and play full time professionally. I didn't have that option in Scotland at that point, and of course we also had Anna Signol, who's Swedish, so she did come to quite a few games
True.
to watch, and yeah, like for me, like international football is the pinnacle um, of your career, and yeah, I think it all married up quite well. To be honest, I moved abroad to a stronger league. Yeah, like I said, to better myself, and it coincided with getting my first cap.
When it comes to getting picked for Scotland, I feel like it's the most obvious question on the planet. Obviously, I'm English, but like I can't imagine playing for England. Like it feels like watching your national team is the pinnacle, if that makes sense. Like the best games I've ever been to are the Euros, both men's and women's recently, because it just felt like that's world football. That's the pinnacle. So when you get picked for your country, I bet you think, oh, brilliant, that's one cap. I've sort of done it. But that's actually when the hard work begins, isn't it? And 102 caps later. But I imagine you could have never imagined the international career that you've had at that point.
No, definitely not. I think yeah, like you're saying, like when you get that first one, you're like, wow, like that's just like obviously that is a massive achievement in itself, and you're not sitting there thinking about the next one. Um, but yeah, like to do it so many times, like it's obviously I've had time now to sort of sit back and reflect on it, and yeah, it's something that I'm incredibly proud of, and yeah, it's been a massive part of my life, like playing with that team and growing up with those players. And yeah, it means so much to me that I've been able to do it.
I am going to come back to the international stuff. So if people are thinking I've just like bypassed it immediately, I am going to come back to it. But first and foremost, obviously, you did come back to Scotland in 2014 to be with the club you're now completely synonymous with. The names I mentioned before, Leanne Ross, Joe Love, players that are synonymous. You're there as well now because of the time you spent here and the success that you've had. But looking back to the day when you came back to Glasgow City, you touched on a few of the difficulties you had in Sweden, some of the slight negatives you had. But what was it that made you mind up to return home to Scotland and specifically with Glasgow City?
Um, well, yeah, I was ready to come home. I think I wasn't sure like how long I was coming home for in that sense, but yeah, I was ready to just come home and be at home. But yeah, certainly when Glasgow City they'd asked me before, and I still wanted to play abroad, so I went and did that. And yeah, when they asked again, it was a no-brainer for me. They had just qualified for the quarterfinals of the Champions League, so yeah, we had that in March, I think, after I signed, and the club was flying, to be fair, like completely punching above its weight as it has done for many years. And yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to just come home and enjoy football. But yeah, obviously play at a really, really good level.
When you came back to play in the quarterfinals, you were eligible for that as well. It was obviously the first time Glasgow City got the quarters, we know, which we will go on to very soon.
Yeah.
That was a very famous night at Petershill after that, but that was the first time they sort of reached the quarterfinals in total, and you weren't cup tied or anything. You could go straight into a quarterfinal of a Champions League as well, couldn't you?
Yeah. I mean, I did feel a bit bad in the sense of the girls had done all the graft for me and I just came in, but yeah, that was an incredible experience, like to play PSG. We did really well at the home game, actually. I think, well, we got beat 2-0, but in the grand scheme of things, like, it was a good game. And then we went away from home, and that was really, really hard. But yeah, again, you're playing at like a massive, massive stadium in front of a big crowd, and yeah, again, an eye opener, another really like big experience to have.
Especially then, maybe a bit more normal now, but then it wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm quite interested because I know how much of a persuasive person and lovely person she is at the same time. Laura Montgomery, obviously, most people will know. Laura's done such an amazing job, and I hope she doesn't mind me saying that. With Glasgow City, there's a reason there's about 4 or 5 documentaries about what her and Cass have both done.
Yeah.
But when you sat down with her, Cass and Laura, I imagine there's still a level of convincing to some point. But how convincing were they for you to be like, right, Hayley, you're going to be here for the next 10 years or so. So just sign the contract and we'll see you on Sunday.
I mean, she is very convincing, but yeah, and I can't even like think back to how it even all panned out. But even like now, like I can sit and have lunch with her like at Petershill, and after speaking to her, I'm just like, yeah, I'm so passionate about this club still. Like we share the same values. Like she's just so driven, and that's why I've been at the club for so long, because I do share the same values as the club. I want to be part of the success. I want to add to the success. And yeah, when I speak to like people like Laura and Cass, like they're just the passion they have for like driving the game forward, driving the club forward. Like it could be like a 10-minute like sort of meeting with them, and I just go away from it and I'm like, yeah, this is for me. Like this is what I want to be doing. And yeah, the two of them are absolutely incredible, to be fair.
I think my first experience with Laura was well before I worked for Glasgow City, and it was when the game was stopped because of COVID, and I quite strongly felt that my job as a journalist, which people know that you should be allowed to play because the men's game was getting played. Yeah. So I tried to speak to someone from Rangers, Celtic, Glasgow City, and Hibs, which at the time was the top 4. And I messaged the Glasgow City page and said, like, is anyone willing to speak to me for like, a 10-minute phone call just about how you're feeling and just to add to the piece so I can have your voices, the most successful Scottish women's club ever. And I got a message back saying, I'm the CEO, I'm Laura, I'll do it. So, all right, brilliant, no bother.
No worries.
Baptism of fire, I think. And she was just, at the same time though, I was like, what you've done is amazing. But at the same time, all these facts and figures and the argument that you have for pushing this forward, but why it shouldn't be essentially stopped when the men's game's going forward. You're giving me every fact and figure to kind of put in this article here. And it was like, she does make a real impact. And I hope she doesn't mind me saying that, because this is quite embarrassing when I've got to go back and do some video work on Wednesday and just sort the programs out, isn't it? But she does have like this impact where she's actually really family friendly, but so driven. It's kind of almost inspiring in a way. I imagine that's massive as someone that is the custodian of your football club. And Cass is exactly the same in a much more bubbly way.
Yeah, no, exactly. They're both similar but very different. But yeah, like to have those two leading the football club, I think is huge. It's massive. It's like, obviously the club is all about championing women and girls, and to have those two at the front doing that, which they, of course, they've like driven the standards of the club and made it what it is today, which is another story. That's phenomenal. But like in turn, they've then changed Scottish football as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like their impact and their reach, like of what they've achieved, is huge. It's absolutely massive.
I don't think people will probably realise what they both did for Scottish women's football until they're like not involved in the game anymore. Which hopefully
I know.
It's never going to be the case for Glasgow City. I know there's been on the documentary, they said they thought, is this maybe the time to go? And obviously they've got roped back in by themselves, essentially. But I don't think people will really realise what they've done for the women's game in Scotland and the wider game, to be fair, until they're no longer in it, will they?
No, I don't think so either. But hopefully they're in it for many more years.
Fingers crossed. It's really hard to pinpoint moments of like 8, 9, 10, whatever league titles, trophies, right, left and centre that you've picked up. It's really hard to define your time at Glasgow City. It's almost impossible on a podcast, if I'm honest. So I'll home in on a couple of big things. I think we touched on the quarterfinals before, but it was the second time you reached the quarterfinals against Bromby. For those unaware, obviously you win 2-0 away from home in Bromby. Massive result. You come back home to Petershill. Hope you don't mind me saying this, but battered for the first 45 minutes. Bromby played really well. They pull it back within like half an hour. Then Lee Gibson, then Lee Alexander has an absolute worldie of a game. It goes to penalties and Lee just saves everything, essentially. But I think there's a good documentary called The Women Who Made Glasgow City, which focuses on it quite a lot and everything that was going on with the club at that time. I really recommend you watching it and not listening to me talk about it on a podcast, because I will not do it as good as justice as that did. But a monumental night in many, many ways. When you sit down in sort of 10, 15 years, when you may have retired by that point, or I don't want to really think about it, and look back on your career, how high does that night come into your thoughts as like a career highlight?
No, like huge. I think like the emotions I had, because we won 2-0 away from home, and they were a class team. Like the style of football they played, they were very good. And like coming back, it looked comfortable to everybody. Like we had a 2-0 away win, and I'm trying to explain like to like my friends and my family and that. I'm like, no, like this isn't done. Like this is going to be really hard. And yeah, like you're saying, we got pumped basically. Like the first 45 minutes, I remember just standing in the middle of the park, and like it was like me, Joe, and I can't remember. We were just standing like, what are we going to do? Like, how do we fix this? And we actually finished a stronger team in the extra time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we should have maybe won it in the extra time. But to go at the penalties, like, to go from, like, the high of the away win to, like, the low of the first half to then winning on penalties, honestly, I cried for, like, 2 days. Like, I just couldn't, like, not like I seriously did. I couldn't, like, comprehend, like, what I was feeling. Like, it was just amazing. And, yeah, like you said, like, Leeds honestly had the game of her life. So it's one of my best football memories ever.
I do really recommend, for the people who are not aware of this, if they haven't seen it or they've gotten to women's football after that game, go back and just watch the highlights, because Lee's, I don't think, and I hope Lee might not like me saying this, but I don't think she'll have a better game than that.
No, honestly, like, I think, I'm not even sure what happened, because even in, like, the game, she was coming out, she was, like, making big, like, 1v1 saves, so, like, she really kept us in that. And then to come out and save 3 penalties. I mean, yeah, unreal.
When you watch the penalties as well, like, they're not missed penalties, they're good penalties.
No. Yeah, they're like really, really decent penalties, and she's just flying across the goal.
Obviously, there's so much I could go through with Glasgow City, but I wanted to move on to the international stuff because there's so much stuff there that I'm never going to get through, but I'll try. You went to the Euros in 2017 as part of the first ever women's national team at a major tournament in Holland. Obviously, the Euros that came after that, we've seen how huge that was, but that, Euros as well was something that people watched on the TV. It was something that got a lot of recognition. There was videos of the squad from the Scottish FA and stuff like that. A lot of stuff was beginning to happen and the wheels were beginning to turn. How good of an experience was that for you, the time in Holland?
Yeah, it was amazing. That was like a lot of years of hard work from a lot of different people, like loads of players, loads of coaches, and we had such a good squad. It just all came good at that point. And yeah, for it to be our first major tournament, it was an incredible feeling, and yeah, just amazing memories from it. I think just going to Holland and everyone's families being there, like walking out and the national anthem playing, like it's so emotional. And to share that with the group that I did was really special because yeah, a lot of us had grown up together, played in like under 17s, under 19s, and yeah, it was just a massive moment for Scottish football.
What is it like singing the national anthem at a major tournament for your country, especially the first? Because I imagine, look, I've lived in Scotland 10 years. Yes, I'm English, but I've got a lot of affection for Scotland and specifically the women's team. And I know how passionate the men and the women are when it comes to being proud of where you're from. But what is that feeling like when you're singing that national anthem for the first time at the first women's major tournament? Because that's history.
Yeah, it is. It's emotional. Like you can't take that out of it. Like obviously you need to focus and you've got a massive game ahead of you, but yeah, like obviously we're all really passionate to be Scottish and to go out and do that and to have like your family in the stand as well. I think like that was an emotional moment, but for me as well, like when we walked out, obviously like you arrive at the stadium and then you go and have a wee look at the pitch, what have you, do a wee walk. And that was so emotional, like walking out onto the pitch because like the stadium was already like starting to get like busy and like just the atmosphere and like people cheering and clapping and that. Yeah, like that was really special. But yeah, there's no better feeling than standing and singing your anthem.
It's funny there because obviously this is going to go out audio, not video, because I haven't done my hair. So
Either.
Same. But you can see when you talk about it, you're actually smiling as you're saying it. You can sort of see yourself like recalling those memories, but you've got like a big smile on your face as you're saying it. And then it's funny because fast forward 2 years, like I said before, I felt like you were 2017 was like the wheels a bit in motion, but the World Cup in 2019 was the wheels actually being fitted on and starting to drive forward. Yeah. Obviously, Scotland qualifying was massive. First World Cup, first sticker book. Tons of Scottish fans went over. There's a book called Arrival about it, which is a great book by my friend Stephen Lauder, which I've got there on my bookshelf. Being part of that and obviously getting on the pitch against Japan, looking back 3 years on, how do you remember? Maybe not the end of the tournament because we're going to go on to that, but the first two games of the tournament.
Yeah, like, yeah, it was a massive experience for us. I think the England game, like the hype around that, like we hadn't experienced anything like that before. Like the interest, the hype, yeah, everything surrounding that. I think that was a tough game for us, but we found our way in it. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like we had a good few chances at the end that maybe could have went differently for us, but yeah, like just surrounding like the hype and like people, yeah, they talk about it. We'd never experienced that before at like that level. And then going into the Japan game, I think we felt good going into that game. That was my 100th cap for Scotland, and yeah, to do that at a World Cup, like it's not going to get much better for me. But yeah, that was another close game, and like you need to remember, like Japan, like they're winners, aren't they? Like they're absolute class. So yeah, we were a little disappointed in terms of obviously massively respect like Japan and like the level they're at, but we were a little disappointed coming away from that game, and then obviously going into the Argentina game, we knew we had to win, and yeah.
I mean, like I say, I've got a lot of affection for the Scotland women's team. Absolutely do, because I've got friends in there now. That would make sense. You want your friends to do well, I think, or you should do. But before that, I remember watching the game, and obviously it was rosy. I don't want to delve too far into it, but I think everyone remembers it. I remember first 70 minutes, I was like, "Oof, Scotland are coasting here. Like this is absolutely no bother. Like, good for them. Like, they're going through that. This would be more interesting around the game because there's two home nations that are going further forward, and then boom, we know what happens. And the penalty at the end is just the way that happens. I think everyone who's watched it back understands why maybe Scottish people and maybe football fans are a bit like, why was it ever taken again? We all know the reasons behind it, but how long did that? Because you could see people on the pitch. Erin's crying, Nick Dock's crying. That's what I remember specifically. Lee's really crying for obvious reasons. But how long did that crazy sort of 20 minutes, which is a really short space of time, take for you and the other girls to get over it? And have you actually ever got over it?
I mean, I still don't really understand. Like, yeah, over it in a sense because you need to come to terms with it. But at the same time, I don't really understand how it all happened.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what? Like, winning 3-0, like, playing so well, so well. Like, yeah, so well. And then for it, yeah, to go horribly wrong. It was tough. It was really like a horrible place to be in terms of like, obviously we were all together and yeah, like the team, like the girls, absolutely amazing. But just to be on that pitch at the end, knowing that like we had it and then it was gone, yeah, that was a horrible, horrible feeling.
Is that because the dressing room's a difficult place, and I've spoken to a few footballers who've had similar experiences in a sense, like taken away from it literally the last minute. Did anyone speak in the dressing room? Was it who was the first to speak, or was it a case of you just had to kind of take it in for a moment and just be by yourself?
I think the players got together on the pitch. I try to remember. I think Corsie maybe said a few things. I think, yeah, about us just staying together and yeah, like we had got there as a team type thing and we had to stick together in these moments. But it was quiet, as naturally, like, yeah, there wasn't really much left to say. I think we were all just massively disappointed at that point.
Yeah, and I can imagine and feel from the players I spoke to the squad, it does stick a little bit, but that's football, isn't it? It's all about experience and what you take from it. I think what's massive about that, we've talked a lot about the growth of the women's game, and almost like because of the Euros happening, it almost feels like World Cup 2019. You kind of forget that because the Euros took it even further forward. But life did change if you're a women's footballer. How did that change for you following that tournament? Because I imagine people recognise your face. Those people then consistently want autographs, wanting photos. You see it now. The kids will go towards you, Lee, Joe Love, the people who were in that tournament. Your life has changed since then. But how did it feel for that life to change?
Yeah, I'm not sure like my life's necessarily changed. Like, yeah, people maybe do recognise what have you, like things like that. But like now when I see like the level that we've now gone on to, like when I go watch Scotland women now and you see Caroline Weir, like she's at Real Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
We see like people like shouting at Erin, like she's like a superstar for Chelsea. Like the levels we're currently at is it's like I didn't like see this happening even like 5 years ago. But yeah, I think we're moving in the right direction in terms of like the growth of the game, things like that. But still, yeah, we've still got a lot of work to do, like here in Scotland, I think.
I'm hoping one day to eventually get Erin on the show, so hopefully I don't say anything too badly here. But when I was doing my research last night and watching the old Glasgow City interviews back, it's so funny seeing Erin as like a 16, 17-year-old. She's so like Marty. Like
yeah. Honestly, like yeah, she used to like crack me up so much. It's so funny.
There's this one where like I'm not going to do the accent, but like her head right the way down, like almost tucked into her chest, and it's just like, oh, you scored your first goal with a header today. How was that? And she's like, yep, that'll be my last. Yep, don't really do that very often. I'm like, that's Erin Cuthbert. That's just hilarious. And obviously, I think everyone will see watches like with Chelsea and stuff like that now in the media, and like media person's dream from the outside looking in. And met her the once, and she's like the loveliest person on the planet, just dead bubbly, and it doesn't seem to have changed too much, but definitely got better with the interviews. Erin, I hope you don't mind me saying that. You are welcome on the show whenever you would like. It's maybe a really weird question to ask, right? But one of those changes that came with the tournament was women's players went on to FIFA. Now, you can say what you want about it just being a computer game, but it does make a difference. It's a big move. You went on it. You got stuck in at left back. You on obviously the last couple of editions as well, which baffled me. And you put me right and said most of your caps came at left back, which is fair enough. But what's it like seeing your face, your name on like a product that's legendary? If you're completely honest, no matter the fact it's just a game.
I know I've not really thought about it, to be honest. I don't play FIFA, but I think like it's just visibility, isn't it? Like
Yeah,
and women's football out there, like why should it not be on FIFA? Do you know what I mean? And that just comes with the growth of the game. But yeah, I don't know if I'd be playing me at left back, but put Emma Mitchell in maybe.
I'm a fan of you in midfield. Yeah, I think we'll stick Nick Dock or I'm at left back. I'm happy with that. Probably a big question here, but you've got 103 caps for Scotland. I'm a big advocate of you getting back in and getting more caps. I think you know that. I think there's a few people in the media and there's fans. You can see you're still performing. Your stats speak volumes. It's been a couple of years since you've been part of the squad. Where do you see your international career?
Um, I think it's a tough one. Like I think it probably would have happened before now if it was going to happen again. But I think like since like my last cap, I think I didn't it wasn't really like through my choice, so I didn't really get that closure. And I think that's hard at times when you don't have that closure. But I think now like I'm able to take a step back and really like appreciate everything that I've done, and I'm grateful for every opportunity that came my way with that team. Yeah, it's a difficult one because yeah, for as long as you're playing football, you'd want to be doing it the top level. But yeah, ultimately, I think it would have happened before now if it was going to happen again.
But presumably, you feel you can still add to that national team if you were to get the call. I mean, there's people outside of you that do. I imagine you feel you could still add to it.
Look, I think yeah, they've obviously gone in a different direction now, and I think fair enough. We waited long enough for a new head coach to come in. And Pedro's obviously in now, and he's implementing his style and selecting the players that he wants to be involved in that, and that's absolutely fair enough. I think, yeah, the last few camps they seem to have a pretty settled sort of like squad list, and yeah, I think I love going and covering the games now, going and watching the games, supporting the girls, and yeah, hopefully cheer them on to the next tournament.
Few fun ones to end with. I said I'm going to end and start the podcast with similar questions every single time. So, best player you've ever faced, best player you've ever come up against.
Player, try to think. It definitely would have been a Barcelona player when we played in the Champions League. I'm not actually sure who played in the midfield. Bonmati definitely played.
Pateas.
Mateus. I'm trying to
Tony,
think who I
Tony
played.
Duggan was playing left wing, was she?
Aye, she was. Like the away game was honestly, I felt like I was in a washing machine or something. Like I think it was like me, Joe, and Leanne Crichton, maybe Sam Kerr as well. We were just in the middle of the park and we were just honestly like shocked, like trying so hard, like but not really doing anything. It was frightening, like the way they moved the ball, and like I remember Mappy Leon, like she'd have the ball at centre half, and or no, somebody else would have the ball, and she would just whistle, and somebody would switch it to her. Like nobody was speaking, she was just whistling. I was honestly just like, get me off here.
I watched. Obviously, it was a Spain side that didn't have Pateas obviously in the summer, and obviously was missing Hermoso as well. But
Yeah.
just going back to sort of Scottish football, I suppose, in a sense, that shows you how far it's come, though. That I know we got beat 8-0. Oh God, I said we. Did you hear that?
Mm-hmm.
Crikey. But going back like a year, it was 8-0. But then the game at Hampden, which I think we both went to, one or two chances either side of the post, and suddenly Spain had drawn that game. Like Scotland really showed how far they've come, and those players you just mentioned were all involved that night.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've said this like many times, but I think that was a real turning point, especially for the national team that night. Like
Mm-hmm.
to come off the 8-0 game, um, it could have kind of gone either way. Like, and thankfully it went like a good way in terms of like the performance and the character that the girls showed. But yeah, Spain, like their players that they've got, absolutely incredible.
I actually was a bit annoyed at Scotland that night because I came back from New York. I was dead jet lagged. Managed to get 5 hours kip in and go over because I live at Hampden. And I don't know if I should admit this. I don't really bet that much. Please gamble responsibly. But I put a tenner on Spain to win 5-0 and thought, that'll be all right. That's not a bad shout. And then at like half time, I was like, why does this have to be the night Scotland really, really show up? Like, just lose me money. Thanks very much. Final question, which I'm going to do every single episode, which I think is a good one to ask, and probably the hardest I've asked you, to be honest. But your ultimate five-a-side team, which can or cannot include yourself, with players you played against, played with. Sorry,
Played with. Right. Well, I'll go Lee Gibson in the goals then.
Mm-hmm.
Very good goalkeeper. Good with her feet as well.
Yeah.
She likes dribbling out of training and taking people on and Cruyff turning and off she goes. Caroline Weir, because technically, for me, can't be beaten. She's got Velcro shoes. Kim Little.
Yeah.
I think she's so simple in what she does, but just so good at it. Like the way she reads the game, like the way she takes the ball in, like everything. Like she's not like a Caroline Weir in the sense of like the flair and things like that, but just everything that she does is so simple, but she's just like so good at it.
Brilliant player.
She's top. I'm going in there. I'm putting myself in there. I want to play with these folk. Right, so how many is that leaving me? 2.
You've got Lee in goal, Kaz.
Can we? Oh, I need one more.
Yeah, one more. You've got centre forward basically, unless you trust in Kaz and like that false 9. I love how I'm calling that Kaz, by the way. Like I'm my best mate. Caroline Weir. Sorry, Caroline.
We all call her Kaka at Scotland. I'm trying to think who else. I've played with so many good players. I'll just go ahead and Cuthbert. Do you know what? Why not?
I wasn't going to say Erin Cuthbert, but yeah, Erin's got to be in there, I think.
She's doing all right. I'll put her in the 5s team.
It was either that or Jane Ross, I thought, if you're going centre forward.
Oh, Janie. I know. I mean, her goals record for Scotland is pretty class.
It's not too bad. Hayley, actually really nice to chat to you. Not just about like coffee and when can you do the media and when can you do this and when can you do that and can you do this for the programme. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope everyone listening's enjoyed it as well.
I have. Thank you.
Good. Cheers for having me. Cheers for having me on. Cheers for coming on even. Cheers for speaking to me.